Okay, in 5, 4, 3, 2. What's good, family, and welcome to another episode of Jimmy Bond's podcast, right here on WPEB Radio, 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM, West Philadelphia, also streaming on PhiladelphiaRadio.com. You can listen to Jimmy Bond's podcast on all your podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, even iHeart. You can also listen to Jimmy Bond's podcast on each and every morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on PhiladelphiaRadio.com. But welcome, family. Welcome. You can always call us with your comments, your questions, 215-472-0881. Again, it's 215-472-0881. Also, you can email us at jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. Again, it's jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. It's JIMMYBONDS podcast@gmail.com. And again, family, you can also follow us on Instagram at Jimmy Bonds Podcast, on Twitter at Podcast Bonds, as well as TikTok at Podcast Bonds. And you can also join our Jimmy Bond Podcast Facebook group. Let's continue to open the dialogue. Moving right along, family. Tonight, I have a very special guest. This is going to be a great conversation. This is a new series we're starting, supporting Black businesses, supporting businesses in general, independent and as well as corporate. But family, I have a special guest with us tonight. I'm going to say he's an expert in his field, but he has over 30 years of experience within this. So family, let me introduce you to our guest. Mr. Ken Merritt is the CEO of Merritt Advisory. He is a visionary executive advisor with 30 years of transformative leadership across Fortune 500s, nonprofits, and private enterprises. He's a master in strategy execution, organizational redesign, and the enterprise-wide transformation in terms of building a calm, a confident approach to even more complex challenges. He is also a renowned finance thought leadership, and he has a guiding organizations to redefine their financial strategy, their structure, and their performance. He's also a trusted board expert. He's also a passionate person for first people transformation. Mr. Merritt has been in the game for a minute and knows his stuff. Not only is he an advisor and a board member, as well as a former CFO and advisor in that, he's also, again, a trusted board advisor. My apologies. Moving right along, I like to describe him as strategic, insightful, grounded, visionary, transformative, people-centered, impact-driven, financial savvy, collaborative, forward-thinking, inclusive, and purposeful. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mr. Ken Merritt of Merritt Advisory. Give it up for my man, Ken Merritt. Welcome to the show, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us. How are you today? How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling great, and thank you for that intro, man. So now I feel like, I gotta step up into that glaring opening. Thanks for it. Really happy to be here. It's an honor, Jimmy, to spend some time with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. I think a lot of us, I think a lot of times we start to interview people, we don't know a lot about them, but I got a chance to kind of know or figure out some of the things that you do. And I wanted to start off with this because it's something I saw on your website, and I thought it was kind of important to kind of focus on. What is, and let me make sure I clarify this, and it's not wrong. Mm-hmm. What do you call enhancing leadership gravitas?
I love that question because I get it from time to time. Like, what do we mean by that? And Jimmy, I think a lot of times I meet leaders who have so many capabilities, right? They are working every day and they're building their expertise. As you kind of introduced me as an expert, they're experts. But not everyone, their presence matches that expertise, right? And when you have expertise and it shows, that's gravitas, right? Mm-hmm. You shine that expertise, right? The moment you're in is matched by the capabilities that you have.
For sure.
That, my friend, is gravitas. And so in my years of being in the boardroom, working with a lot of executives, I can usually see it sometimes before they do, and I help bring it out the folks who I counsel, advise, and coach.
And let me say this, man. We as a people, right? I'm the son of an educator. Okay, so I see how we can influence and penetrate certain people's demeanors and enhance them and
Yes.
make them more confident in where they're going, what they're doing, even on the C-suite level, right? Even
Yeah.
on the executive level.
Mhm.
And I mean, I look at you, and from what you're saying, the 30 years of experience, you've probably had to come across some people that you've had to have, like, let me have a sit down with you real quick. Let me talk to you and tell you what, not necessarily tell you who you are, but really break down your PowerPoints, as I would call them, right? Am I right? Is that something you probably had to do before?
That's so well said, right? And let me talk about it in general terms, and I'll spend a little time kind of talking about it from culturally. As two black men on here, and because I think there is a cultural dynamic to it. First and foremost, as you meet leaders, right? Um, things aren't always balanced. Sometimes people's outward persona and their internal capabilities get out of sync, right? What that the persona is bigger than the capabilities. Those are the people that we often say, boy, they love to hear themselves talk, and it'd be great if they knew as much as they thought they did, right? Then you have people, boy, who have so much in capabilities, but they're reserved. They're laid back, right? They kind of wait for the time to be prompt. And that doesn't always serve us, right? So it's those people whose gravitas have got to be nurtured and groomed and coached up, right? And so that you see that across the board with all kind of leaders.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
it comes in many ways to those of us who come from the background who look like you and I, in many ways, when I was coming up, you had to go 30 years ago, man, was the 90s
yeah,
and even before. And we were kind of reared to be a lot measured in the way we talked about things. Not getting ahead of the conversation, not letting our presence be too big and out in front of our capabilities. And so we have to in some cases unwind that cultural dynamic that has been around for us ever since we got into business 40 plus years ago for many of us, and now be able to be confident in our capabilities, confident in our skin that we're talking about. And yeah, you'll make mistakes. Yeah,
yeah.
you'll say things that you shouldn't have. You'll say some things that you wish you had said better. But at the
Right.
end of the day, that gravitas, that confidence, that knowing that you belong there in that moment for that situation is something we all can lean into a lot better.
I think that's exactly what it takes a humbling person to be in an executive position. And I think a lot of times we got Donald Trump out here and we look see that and everybody's like, this is what he's supposed to be, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But to be a leader, you have to be humble. As much as people would say, like, you don't have to, you have to be humble because you're the leader, but you do have faults because you're human.
Yes.
So how does leadership accept some of the faults, make those corrections, and improve without somebody such as yourself doing that? You get what I mean? Like it's kind of like because we're CEOs, CFOs, we get full of ourselves. They're like, hey,
Yes.
I'm hot, boy. Nothing you can tell them hot.
That's
But
right.
you get to a point where you're like, all of us need to, like you talked about that balance factor, how it's important to balance
Yeah.
those things out.
Yeah.
And I think as far as even being a CEO, a CFO, any type of executive, or even just a regular customer service rep, right?
Yes.
You have to find a particular place in you to understand that I'm good at this. I have weaknesses at this. If I
Yeah.
work on my weaknesses, I can actually improve my strengths.
That's right.
And I think a lot of times, if you have a humble executive, your company is probably going to be a lot more successful because they're willing to make those corrections, make those adjustments, and figure out how I can help my company improve. Right?
Humility is a major, major asset to any human, right? And especially leaders, right? Because none of us are perfect. None of us know everything, right? And when you think you do, you're far more dangerous than you are helpful, right?
Mm,
And so what I love to see is when leaders kind of process that, hey, I need a thought partner. I need an advisor. I need a confidant, right? And when it first shows itself, right? And because sometimes I meet a leader and they're a little bit timid about it. They're like, hey, I don't want to, I'm not weak. I don't want to think I'm not ready for the moment, but I can use this. And I always tell them, you don't know a superstar that didn't have a coach. You don't know, like Michael Jordan had Phil Jackson, right?
Kobe too.
Kobe had Phil Jackson. Muhammad Ali had
Good
people,
guess about it. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, every executive that you see on TV has been coached, and they have thought partners. They have people who are helping them with their development and growing from it. And so the question is, are you humble enough to seek that and accept it when it presents itself to you? And so what I try to do is help sometimes leaders make that case. A lot of times when I talk to certain leaders, they know it's important, and so they lean into it and kind of, if they're on the board or if they're a CEO and they've got a CFO who they think has all the potential in the world, but just needs a thought partner to help them reach that max potential, they're all for it, right? So I just wish more leaders who would grasp that humility, understand that their greatness is still before them, and even when they're at their best, they can always be a little bit better. They can always use a thought partner. They can always use someone to kind of say, "Hey, I love the way you did that, but maybe next time this might be even more productive," right?
Yeah.
Because we all none of us are perfect, and we can all use that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I was saying. So somebody like you in your position, your company, somebody
Right.
like you coming in, they're like, oh no, come on, please come, please help, we need it, right? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's love. Let me ask you this question. We all when we think of corporations, even in our own community, we think of businesses. We always be like, I'm CEO. Who is the CEO of this organization, right?
Right.
Everyone wants to be the chief executive officer. However, I spent some time in corporate America, so I kind of know how this thing goes, right? However, the CFO position
Mm,
is probably more vital than the CEO position.
yep.
And because if we don't have our money straight, how are we going to be able to move forward and grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you are advising on finding a CFO for particular organizations, when you're advising them on what's the executive direction they should go,
Mhm.
what are some of the qualities that you kind of highlight that a CFO should have?
Yeah, it's such an important point. Because Jimmy, as you said, at the worst case, the CFO is the second most important person in the company, right? And to your point, there are days when they're the most important person, right? And so when I talk to companies looking for CFOs, right, there's a certain number of things that I think they got to focus in on. They've got to focus. Number one, I'd say be someone who's partnering, right? Someone who is, yeah, in many ways, talking about in real talk, a ride or die type person, right? That's going to be at the table with all the leaders in the company through the ups and the downs, right? When in the growth times, talking about how good we are, but also in kind of the down times, because it calls for course correction sometimes, right? Which leads me to point number two. They've got to be a communicator, right?
Mm,
They've got to be someone who is not afraid to kind of tell it like it is, right? In all the rooms they'll have to go to, the big boardroom and sometimes the big stage, because you got people looking and people invested in a company, whether it's public, whether it's private equity, whether it's family owned, whether it's employee owned. Those folks are looking for someone who can communicate what really is happening here, right? And then the third one is someone who is not afraid of change, right? And you mentioned in the intro transformation. I've been around a lot of transformation, and sometimes that's an overused word. But if you're growing at a high rate, you're transforming. If you're installing new technology, you're transforming. If you're going into a new new region, you're transforming. If you've
Hmm.
got a new leader, you're transforming. And so having someone who, like I said, can be ride or die, can communicate and be there for that transformation is what you need in a CFO. And these are just a number of kind of the broadest categories. We can click down at any time and dive into them, but those are the big things strategically when I talk to leaders about what they ought to find in their CFO.
I mean, those are key points. Those are key points that you would look for somebody. Like, I mean, particularly you talk about business, you got to have money for business. So if you don't have somebody that's like you said, keeping it real, walking in and being like, hey, we shouldn't be spending this money that we just spent on these trips last week. We need to go
That's
ahead
right.
and make sure we say, you know what I mean? So
That's right.
it has to be somebody that's reputable, trustworthy. Integrity, I think, is very important with that.
Very important word. Integrity. Integrity uh, through thick and thin,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Transparency and honesty through thick and thin, right?
yes,
They've got to in those tough times, you got to know that when they say and give you the story that is trustworthy, that is accurate, and that they stand behind it, right? And many times, I love the point. I love that you went there with integrity, right? Because to me, that part's not even a question, right? If you feel like the person isn't, if because integrity and being trustworthy is
yeah,
binary. It's
yes,
binary. It's either
yes.
100% or it's zero,
No,
right?
right. It's
So
neither black or white, right?
it's either black or white, right? And few things are. That is black, white. If a person has the integrity, or if you don't know, then they don't have it. And that's the way you got to think about a CFO in this regard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I know I'm sitting behind a microphone. I do a lot of things podcasting, but I come from a banking background. And I
Mm.
spent 15 years in banking customer service, managing branches, all that stuff. I was managing banks at 26 years old. So I know the importance of integrity. You have to have integrity in those fields. You got to be trustworthy that, you're not going to, swindle, rip off the top,
That's
put
right.
some money someplace it shouldn't be. You're in charge of all the accounts. So you have to have integrity with it. I think
That
that's,
is
that's
non-negotiable.
yeah, unnegotiable, right? Like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if you ride or die, you're gonna be there for the good or the bad, either one, either
That's
one. Let me
yep.
ask you this question: How do you define effective leadership in such a fast-paced world that we live in, and often a disruptive driven business environment that we operate in? How do you define effective leadership?
Yeah, I think there's three ways, right? There's three things, three components, I should say. First is understanding what the goals are, right? Like you have a lot of folks who are leading, right? But are you leading towards the strategic outcomes that the enterprise needs, whether it's growth or profitability or expansion, or mission based, doing more good than you can, right? Whatever that is, like first and foremost, understanding that mission, vision, and working towards it. So that's the first part of effective leadership. Number two is are you meeting the expectations of those around you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And those around you are your stakeholders, ranging from like the board, the other C-suite executives, the team that works for you, your customers certainly. When they expect a certain quality standard, a certain delivery standard, right, a certain execution standard, are you there? Are you on time? Are you giving it at the expectation that they're looking for? Right? So that's the first one. Excuse me, the second one. So organization, you got your stakeholders, and the third one, Jimmy, I think is as critical, and I think this is the one sometimes that people underestimate. Is it consistent with your values? Are you into it in the way that you need to be? Right? Because sometimes some of us sometimes are faking it, right? That we are trying to meet expectations, that we're trying to pursue a direction. But if we, but you'll get exposed in this dynamic, fast changing, up and down world. Think about it like what we've been through and seen in this economy since this administration took over: tariffs, right? Immigration issues, shutdown of not-for-profits and people losing their job, right? I'm here in DC, right? And so if your heart and your character and your efforts aren't in it, people see that. And
Yeah,
it's hard to be effective when you're faking it, right?
yeah,
And
it
so
is.
get aligning to that overall strategy, meeting those expectations and doing to your capability, your heart, your motivations, you line those three things up, boy, you're ready to take on the world.
And see, I love the fact that you talked about that because a lot of times I would work at companies and I'd be like, how did you become CEO? I'm trying to understand it. Who put you in this position? Who was sitting in the boardroom and said this was the right choice? I'm trying to figure this out because I get some places and I scratch like head scratches, like what? Because you know that you can smell. And then you talked about stakeholders. I love this word. Rather,
Yeah.
I love this description of who is important.
Yeah.
And in the corporate America, a lot of times for the C suites, the shareholders are the most important.
That's right.
Now, the shareholders are the shareholders, but your stakeholders make up how your shareholders respond. So if
Yes.
you're not focusing on your stakeholders, you're not focusing on your shareholders either. And of course, the shareholders are the stakeholders, but they're more secondary and return on investment than they are primarily about what we have to get done, the deliverables that you mentioned, just all those things that are important. So like I said, I get in places and I just be like, well, how did you get this job? Who hired you, bro? You need
Yeah.
to figure this out. But it's really, I think that type of understanding goes across the board with a lot of different companies. If you don't have good, effective leadership, your organization will not survive. And I'm not even talking about leadership just on a C-suite level. I mean,
Yeah.
even when I worked in branches at banks, if you don't have effective leadership, your branch will fail. You won't hit your goals. You won't service your customers. You won't be able to do what you have to do if you're not an effective leader. And effective leading isn't always about telling people what to do. Effective leading can be, let me look at the whole picture. Who's good at what? How can I delegate and know that the job's going to get done so we can reach this goal that we're all going for?
I love it.
That to me is the definition of effective leadership. If you can sit back and look at everybody that's under you or working with you and be able to pinpoint and put them in places and really put them in places of success rather than failure, you will always be an effective leader. That's just my definition, Ken. I ain't trying to go off
You're
of what
killing
you
it.
know.
You're killing it though. You're killing it. That's exactly right. Because notice in my answer, I didn't say you had to be a C-suite person or executive this. Yeah, I said you need to know where the org is going and what they're trying to accomplish. You need to know where your stakeholders and your stakeholders can be other middle management. The people who sit beside you, right? The people who work for you, right?
Yes,
And who you work for. All those folks, right?
yes,
You got to deliver to their expectations. So yeah, like I think it's even more important at the middle and early levels that you
yeah.
understand leadership, because it just makes your growth that much and your success that much more accelerated.
It does. It sets a tone. It sets a tone for what's expected for the people that's coming in. If I set the tone from as soon as you get here, you know how I'm gonna go. You're gonna understand how you can adjust, how you're gonna work around it, what's gonna make you successful in this environment. All that's important.
Yeah.
All that is vital and key. I mean, I got a team of four that I work with. I don't work for, I work with, right? And I often have to think about, okay, so I think my man Tyler would be better at doing this. I think
Hmm.
Lady T can actually knock this out. You know what I mean? So it's
You
and
go.
and and you got to be a leader in that and understand, and even down to understanding who you're talking to when you're delegating.
See.
So just even being able to say, okay, I know Lady T, she receives messages better if I say it this way,
There you
right?
go.
With
Yep.
Ty might be like, all right, Jimmy, cut the fat, tell me what it is. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? So it's so vital to understand who you're working with, what their strengths are, and how to really kind of nurture their flaws. That's really what it is, you know.
Jimmy, come on now. Now you're enhancing their leadership gravitas. Come on, man. Come on now. You're breaking it
I'm
down.
just saying.
You're
I'm just
breaking it
saying.
down. That's
I'm just
exactly
saying.
right. That's effective leadership. And each one of us has, our opportunity to do it. Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you killed that.
Yeah, man. So I mean, one of the things, one of the other things that you do that I thought was interesting was, and I don't know how this is or how you define this, but maybe you can help me out with this.
Yeah.
What is financial thought leadership?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There are a number of different iterations, but in many cases, we have a lot of leaders who sit in financial leadership roles, right? Who are helping their companies navigate, sales and revenue and
Mm-hmm.
profitability
Mm-hmm.
and decision on
Mm-hmm.
where to invest in the company and those kind of things. And sometimes those jobs can be lonely, right? Where you're trying to figure out like what's the next play, right? Where we're in this position and we need to figure out what's next, or we have this growth goal and need to figure out like where our profitability really is, or where our
Mm-hmm.
customer segments are most accretive to our goals. And sometimes for leaders, you're trying to sort this out for the first time. If you've only been in one place or a CFO for a short time, you kind of need someone who's been there, done that, can kind of help you read the tea leaves, so to speak, of what's in front of you, and kind of say, hey, um, think about this, because the last time this is me, Ken Merritt speaking. The last time I saw this situation, my CFO friend, client, contact there had these three options, and they chose option two, and here was the outcome. And by the way, your scenario looks a lot more like option two, and so hey, why don't we try this on for size, right?
For sure.
Or if you're still, if you're trying to navigate some more dynamics, let me introduce you to this person over there who can give you some more on the ground details of how they navigated through that. So in many ways, think about it as they're going through big thoughts and big decisions. They need a thought partner, they need an advisor, they need someone who can help them navigate these things that they may see once every 3 or 4 years. I see
Yeah.
them once every 3 or 4 months.
Yes. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that you would, evaluate those things because really projections, what's coming
Yes.
up, what's coming on down the line. What did where were we at last year,
Yes.
2024? Where are
Yes.
we at in 2025 and what are our projections for 2026 based on the data that we've received now? You know what I mean?
Great
Just
example.
based on right,
Great
so
example.
go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Great example. And like, think about that one in the context of tariffs, right? If you're trying to do projections and all of a sudden you got tariffs looming over, and you're like, well, how am I supposed to handle this? Someone like me is like, well, uh, of the other 4 to 5 CFOs that I talked about, or talked to, who are going through this exactly the same time you are, here are the 3 or 4 different ways they've looked at it. Let's figure out which one's going to work best for your company, for your leadership
Yeah,
team, your
yeah,
industry, for
yeah.
your capital situation. So yeah,
That
that's
yeah.
exactly right.
That makes a lot of sense. That definitely makes a lot of sense. And I guess having suggestions for them or having examples, I
Yes.
think probably makes their decision making a lot easier because if when you feel like you're doing something no one else has done or no one else is going through, you're gonna be like,
Mhm.
I don't know how. You might short yourself or second guess yourself, right?
That's right.
you
That's
know
right.
so you want to have confidence in knowing that other organizations or other people in my position at other companies have made these type of decisions, and I think that's probably the most critical. Like, sometimes we're afraid to take risk unless we've seen other people do the same thing, right?
That's exactly right.
you
That's
know
exactly. And in those kind of jobs, you think a lot of people, they see them as high. They're already high stress, and they see them as
yeah,
high stakes.
yeah,
And so what you don't want leaders to do is to move too slow, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
time is money. Real talk again. And so having someone to help you think through that, to bounce ideas, run some scenarios, right? Toss around some ideas. Another example is, hey, sometimes you can try something, um, and make it a pilot or a test, and here are the early indicators. So okay, that's not working the way. Let's pull the plug and head down another path.
yeah,
And someone like me can help them kind of process that think about that and not having them think, yeah, I'm one and done with this, right? Or is
Yeah,
that if I make the wrong decision, I'm gonna get fired tomorrow. Because that's generally not the case, right?
yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this question. We're gonna segue into something I kind of wanted to ask you. You've dealt with this for 30 years. You've been advising for 30 years. And after you've been doing it for so long, what what propelled you to say, you know what, I can advise organizations or C-suites or CFOs or anybody about what's the
Yeah.
best way to do it. What was the story behind you even getting into that?
Yeah, this I love this question, and because it's a little bit, it's reflective of my journey through it, right? In that, so I started my career with big companies, right?
Mm,
Started in my early years, I worked for GE. At that point, there was no bigger company, fewer bigger companies on the planet than GE in the 90s. I worked for Deloitte Consulting, right? I worked for, and then I had clients who were big, a Bank of America, a Citi. Um, and what I learned is, that I could play in the most complex situations that there is, right? The most strategic, circumstances and challenges that all those companies has. I can play, I can help them solve it, etc. Meanwhile, I had friends at other companies, some of them large companies, some of them medium sized, some of them starting out on their own with small businesses. And when you start talking with them, you start learning and hearing that they have the same issues that the large companies have, right? But they have far fewer resources, right? They couldn't afford to pay Deloitte rates if you're a, 20 million, 50 million, even a $5 million company. But you yet you still have questions about growth, questions
yeah,
about your team, questions
yeah,
about, making your leaders ready for the moment. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to be there more for my friends. I wanted to be there more for people who were small business oriented, who just wanted to do good things. In many ways, put a product or a service on the street. Sometimes the things, Jimmy, are mission based. I love working for not-for-profits, right? And that's not about the money. That's about accomplishing some thing that makes the world better. And yet the same strategic issues persist. And so I launched Merritt Advisory. This is our 6th year as an entity. And we have never turned back because we love what the impact and the difference that we make. And we make because I don't see this as a a business that's out to make money. I see this
mm,
as my purpose in being there for people who look and think and want to just do the right thing about how they serve. And some of that's for profit, some of that for mission based, and it is all good as far as I'm concerned.
Oh man, you hit me with the word that I probably was going to ask you about, but that word purpose
Yeah,
and the importance of living your
yeah,
purpose.
yeah.
And I often feel like if you live in your purpose, everything else that comes with it is extra.
That's
You know what I mean?
well said. That's
And,
well
and
said.
so you talked about nonprofits. I mean, a lot of people don't know the basic breakdown of nonprofits, not for profit, and corporations. There are three different entities going on, but
Mhm.
nonprofits actually need the most help.
Yes.
Um, they are the difference between them a lot of times, depending on how those organizations are run, is really tax bracket. So between
Yes.
non-exempt
Yes.
taxes and paying taxes is really the difference between nonprofits and corporations. But
Yep.
nonprofits have to operate like corporations. They
Mhm.
have to operate them like them. If they don't, then they're not. It's just going to be grassroots. So you have to have strategy on how you're going to raise money. You have to have strategy on how you're going to reach more people that you're trying to help. You have to have strategy on how on marketing, on finance, on outreach. You gotta have strategy for that. It's not just, oh, we're grassroots. We're just gonna get out here and raise some money. It's like, no, you have to have a proper way of doing this, like any other organization. So I love nonprofits because they actually crave and need
Yes.
somebody who with expertise that wants to come in and help. Good cause, good purpose, good reason. Because then guess what? If I'm helping and I do something great, I go home, I got peace of mind. I
Yeah.
know that these companies, these organizations going to succeed. On top of that, before we were talking about having not just integrity, but actually wanting to do something, actually wanting to live that purpose and being there. When you're dealing with nonprofits, you have to want to be there. You have
Yeah.
to.
Because they're not doing it for the money,
No,
right?
they're not.
All the stuff you said, they're doing it with very limited resources,
Yeah,
right? But they have challenges, and the people are there kind of pouring their time, talent, and even to some extent their own treasure because they can probably make more money, right? And
yeah,
sometimes they're putting money into it while they're working.
yeah.
Think about teachers and other administrators who um, sometimes pay for their own supplies that they are using in their day-to-day jobs. And so, yeah, I get a kick out of not-for-profit and work, man, because you kind of know that people there are leaned into their purpose. And so the least I can do is give my time and talent and so forth to help them reach those missions.
That's love. That's we need more of that. They probably need about 3, 4, 5, 17 of Mr. Ken Merritt over here. I mean, sometimes you can, a lot of times I see people a lot of times working for money instead of working for purpose.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong working for money. I'm definitely, if anybody out there listening, there's nothing wrong working for money.
Go get your
However,
money.
go get your money, right? But you're gonna hit a cap of being like, I made a lot of money, but I still don't feel like whole. I still don't feel complete. I still don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. You can be the richest person in the world, but still feel empty, right?
That,
So that's what those nonprofits are supposed to be there for. That's why you see Bill Gates and all the rich ones creating nonprofits so they can be like, yeah, we got to give back. We got to make sure it makes you feel whole when you give back to people that are less that are needed or less underprivileged. You
yeah.
need to be able to have something like a nonprofit.
Love that.
I
Love that.
mean, from nonprofits that help you with your bills, your gas, your rent, all of those things, even just educational nonprofits. It's
Yeah.
so vital and important. Okay, all right, Ken, I can go on a diatribe about this, so please
Well, no,
excuse
I love the
me.
point because, said simply, go get your money, but then also give back where you can. Reach back and pull somebody else up along the way. And so,
Yeah, that's the only Ken, that's the only way we
I
gonna
love the
make it,
point.
man. That's the
Yeah,
only way we're gonna make it,
that's the
especially
only way,
us. That's the only
especially
way.
people like you and me.
Yeah,
Exactly.
man, that's it. And so I'm gonna ask you this. We're gonna come to the end of the interview, but look, Ken, I've had a ball talking to you, bro.
Pleasure to mine,
I've
bro.
had a ball, man. This is a subject that I think, as two African American brothers, I think we've kind of understand it and going into it.
Mhm.
But DEI
Yeah.
has transformed
Hmm.
what it was to what it is, and actually, I think that they have used it as a marketing employee against the
Hmm.
correct way of doing things, right?
Right.
So with you now, I mean, we are probably 5 months into this, 6 months into this new administration,
Yeah.
and you deal with all types of clientele, from major corporations to not to smaller corporations.
Yeah.
What what are you advising them these days
Yeah.
about DEI? What would be your advice now?
Yeah. It's a great point, right? And you know, 3 years ago, DEI was 40, 50% of my business, right? Because it's something I learned because at the end of the day, I'm a DEI product, right? When I was recruited uh, at GE out of North Carolina A&T as part of a program, diversity program to make sure that GE hired more kind of black folks in the area of finance and accounting. And so I'm a product of that, believe it through and through. Um, there's kind of two messages that I give today, right? Um, One is kind of the big picture, right? In that DEI has always been an ebb and flow thing ever since the start. We make progress, then forces come and take it right back down, and then it accelerates again when something comes up. we want to hope that the something comes up is good natured and not some tragedy, right? Or someone being murdered or something that sparked like the last round in 2020.
Yeah, George
But
Floyd, right.
George Floyd has been up and down, Breonna Taylor, all those kind like it's been up and down, up and down, up and down over ever since the 60s, right? And so um, we have to keep proper perspective that every time we've had a down, we've had an up. And so our up is coming again, right?
Mm,
Is what I believe.
mm,
The second part is we do we do DEI a disservice when we don't remain optimistic, which is kind of my part of rolling from where I said in kind of part one to the message to part two. We have to remain optimistic. We have to remain um, vigilant for the opportunities to serve the greater good, right? It won't always come easy. Sometimes we're going to have to take down a post off our website. We just are, right? For better or for worse. And that doesn't mean we're not fighting. That doesn't mean we're not progressing. That doesn't mean we have to change our values, right? And so keep our values of optimism, keep our values of making the world a little better every day.
hmm hmm
And this too will pass, man. And so, take the initiatives, take the opportunities, measure ourselves on our values and our activities the way we always have, not on the big, did we change our logo to reflect Pride this month,
Yeah.
right?
Oh God.
Or last month now, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
important. Like
Yeah.
this month, it's ADA, American for Disabilities Act, later this month, and we should be celebrating that. And
Yeah.
2 years ago, we could celebrate it and everybody feel good. Now we're a little bit more reserved. Let's be careful of being critical of folks who've had to dial it back for reasons, most of them bad, but some of them probably were a right call. Rather, let's be optimistic. Let's talk, let's measure people on their values, and let's get to the other side because the flow will come back, and let's be optimistic about the flow.
I completely agree with you. I have to completely agree with you. I think that as a black person in America, I think a lot of times we forget that corporate America has to exist in a certain kind of way. It's not just us.
That's
Does
right.
that make sense? It's not just
Exactly
us.
right. That's
And I
exactly right.
think and I think what happens is because of our plight, our oppression, and what we've gone through, we tend to not think realistically about the bigger picture of what everybody, these companies are dealing with,
That's right.
right? Now,
That's
granted, the black dollar is probably the biggest dollar in America. We've got the most spending power. We consume the most. We know why that is XYZ, right?
yes.
But at the same point, we have to also understand that these companies are here not just because of our dollar, because of all American dollars.
That's correct.
And I know I do not want to sound like I'm downplaying DEI. I'm not. I'm a product of DEI myself. I mean, I went to a predominantly white school in high school. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? From fifth grade to 12th grade, I was at a predominantly white school with kids that had more money, way more money than I ever would have seen in my life.
Mhm.
However, because of my DEI experience, I'm where I'm at today because of that, right?
That's
I'm able to be in rooms that I probably shouldn't be in.
mhm.
And there are values in DEI, and
Yeah.
then there's other things about DEI that we could kind of just understand that need to be changed, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, like I said, if we got to look at it from a bird's eye view, I'm not boycotting Target. I'm not boycotting McDonald's. I'm
Right.
not. I can't boycott Walmart because I got to go to Walmart to go get my stuff. I can't do certain boycotts that the majority of us say we should do because of the fact of I realize I live in America, not in Ghana. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I'll give you an example to the Target one, right? Because like, and I've known Target leaders, Target board members for years, right? And I've seen the type of investment they've made over the long term in DEI. right?
Exactly.
And they, I've been to the National Black MBA Conference. I've been to National Association of Black Accountants. I've been to, uh, ELC. Target was always there, right? Target has Black board members. But the real thing, Jimmy, that made it apparent to me is I live in a community that my city is probably 80% Black.
Yes.
And when we boycott a Target in an 80% Black neighborhood, it's actually Black people whose jobs, right, we're impacting, right? And we'll move the needle. Yeah, someone in Target headquarters will look at it and say, "Wow, Black folks really boycotted and that hurt." But 9 times out of 10, their retaliation, or I shouldn't say their intervention, let me use the word intervention, a better word, will be, okay, we have to underinvest in that store in the Black communities. Not that Target's going to close anywhere globally. They're going to close and underinvest in the stores in our community.
Yeah.
And when the boycott's over, then our stores are substandard. Right. And so
Yep.
I just always challenge us on the DEI topic, and I like the way you said it, to realize that we got to be part of a bigger picture. And the change never comes as fast as we want it to,
Yeah.
right? We shouldn't accept uh, things not changing, right?
Right.
But we've
Right.
also got to be pragmatic about the change. We've also got to understand that there's going to be setbacks, right? But as long as we remain trying to do the right thing, have our values in the right place, and through it all, be optimistic about like getting to the greater good, which I know is hard, right? We'll accomplish. Any way you slice it, we'll a hell of a lot better than our parents and grandparents, right? And they will
Yeah.
tell you that, right? And so
Yeah.
we
They
got to
will.
make sure our kids are better.
And that's the kid. That's the key. You got to make sure the kids are better. And I'm gonna be honest with you. As much as despair as there is around America right now, with
Mhm.
everything that's going on, um, I think we're in a place where it had to get worse before it got better.
Mm,
Right.
mhm,
So I say all that to say because it's like we can't go nowhere but up from here.
mm.
Right? That we can't be like, oh man, the world is going to be over. Like, no, we're at this point and it gets better. We have to provide that hope. We have to push that envelope of hope. That yes, I know it looks crazy right now, but I can see that light 40 miles down the road. I see it. Everybody's getting cars to go 40 miles. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how you have to evolve with the punches, I would say. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You
that's
think
why I use the word optimism.
right,
I think
optimistic.
that's the way I use the word optimism. The
Yeah,
exact point you are. If you think about it, again, we come from a people who again had it worse, and the only thing that kept them going is no believing and knowing they could get the better, right? And
that's it.
it
That's
was
that's
optimism.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was optimism, hope,
Hope. Yep.
belief that this
Optimism.
is going to get better. So
Exactly.
I think that's what it is right now. A lot of us don't believe it's going to get better, but I know it will
Yeah.
because as a country,
Yeah.
not as just our people, but
Yes.
as a country, I think we'll look back and be like, wow, we have really progressed to where we wanted to be. I
Yeah.
think sometimes I think sometimes you got to shake the tree to get the
Yeah.
bad stuff out and
Yeah.
see what we don't want and
Yeah.
realize what we can use moving forward that'll be better for us. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
Ken, let me ask you this question before I let you go, man. I know, like, I got to tell you, brother, I have had a ball talking to you
Yeah.
tonight. Really, I've had
Likewise.
a ball, man.
Maybe.
Um,
Yeah.
when you look back at your career, right, what are you most proud of?
Ooh, that was a tough one. Uh, Um, I think I'm probably most proud of, and this probably sounds a little corny, right? Um, but I'm proud of kind of where I've landed,
Mm,
right? And what I mean by that, right? I think I was telling someone recently, I'm a product of so many different experiences, right? That kind of built upon each other, from finance to strategy, um, to leadership, to
mm-hmm,
growing
mm-hmm,
up, partially in Prince George's County, Maryland, here in the DMV, right?
PG County.
PG County to being a product of rural South in North Carolina, right? To an
Yeah,
HBCU like
yeah.
A&T, but going to Kellogg School of Management for my MBA. I'm a product of a lot of things, and I'm most proud of what it all has kind of helped shape and mold me into. I have a blast, right? And for the most part, all the stuff we talked about and kind of understanding my purpose, being able to give when I can give, being able to serve when I can serve with clients and those kind of things. I've got a wonderful family I'm blessed with, right? I've got friends and all the things. Yeah, generally speaking, my well-being is high, right? I love to stay healthy and energized from all these things. And so, I don't think it's one thing, Jimmy. Maybe it's not a great answer, but I love where I've landed, right? I've landed in a place and it isn't linear, right? And it isn't automatic, right? I kind of think about, 10 or 15, 12, 15 years ago, if you ask me, was I as kind of comfortable and happy mentally and kind of who Ken Merritt is and what I've done, I'm not so sure I would have felt I would have gave you a big yes. But here I am now, like kind of 30 years into all of this. I understand what well-being means, which is so much more than a job or a title
Mm,
or who you
mm.
work for. And so Merit Advisory isn't just a company, it's a persona. It's um, a purpose. It's a thing that me and my family lean into and all my, team lean into so that we can have great well-beings, right? And
Mm.
it's this outcome more than any step along the way because I've had some many great steps along the way.
I mean, that's all to be. That's something definitely to be proud of. It's not that you didn't answer the question. You definitely answered the question. How can you not? How can you be a black man in America and get to the point where you're at and not be like, yo, I'm so proud of myself. I
Yeah.
can't believe I'm here. Everything I've been through. By the way, shout out to the Aggies, North Carolina A&T. Shout out to the Aggies. Got to send
Aggie
some love
pride.
down there. Got to. I don't know how many of us from DC went down to North Carolina A&T, but a whole lot of us was down there. I mean, we get down there all Atlanta and all that kind of stuff, but definitely North Carolina A&T is a hot spot for
Yeah,
a lot of graduates out of DC. So up here in Philly too. So it's definitely one of those things, man. So yeah, I appreciate your answer because it was real and it was genuine. I think I think even with my own life, sometimes I have to sit in my house and be like, thank you God for getting me this far.
that's right.
And it's not about success all the time. It's just the fact that I look up and I'm
Yes.
living my
Yes,
purpose.
that's it. That's you said it better than I did. I gave you a long-winded answer, but yes, that's it. Like it's as much a feeling like I say sometimes to people like if whether it's um you know being an Aggie or being an alum of X school like my MBA or alum of a company or whether it's my fraternity is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. I always say I'm not one thing. I'm a collection of things. And that is the point to be proud of. I'm a collection of experiences that have shaped and molded me. And that's what I'm most proud of.
I love that because that's with me too. Jimmy's my father name. Bonds is my connection, which means we are connected. I pull all my experiences from all over the place and I bring them to who I am today. We bond them together so that we can be who we are, who we're supposed to be, and live our purpose. That's exactly what it is, Ken. It's no different. It's definitely the thing, man. Now, before I let you go, anything you want to say to the family, the listeners, before I let you go?
Yeah, no, I want to say, hey, this has been a real pleasure talking with Jimmy, and hopefully I've given you a little bit of a taste of who I am, who we are at Merritt Advisory. And I extend an invitation if there's anything I can ever do to help. And that ranges from things big, of course, but then also small. Just if I said something that resonated and it's like, hey, man, I want to ask that dude a question. Never hesitate. That's why I'm here. I love network. I love meeting people. I love sharing and hearing from folks. And so, thank you for listening and be blessed in all you do.
Where can they find you at? Where's the best place to find you?
They can find me. The website is www.merritt-advisory.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Kenneth Merritt, Merritt Advisory. I'm out there. I would give you my phone number, but I don't want so many texts. Those
You
are
all
two
good.
places to go. And I promise you reach out. I'm easy to find. I'll get back to you in short order.
That's what I love.
I will give the Merit Advisory main phone number, 301-304-1850. So,
There we go, family. Ken Merritt, Merritt Advisory, killing it, dropping bars, as we say, letting the people know. I think the nuggets that you dropped today were key in terms of just growth and understanding where people are going. I think some people will actually be able to use some of your understanding just in their own business and even in their own everyday lives. Family, go find your gravitas. Go get that in order because that's what you need to get to where you got to go. I want to thank y'all for listening to us. Thank y'all for listening to each and every episode we do. But each and every week, we thank y'all for listening to Jimmy Bond's podcast right here on WPEB Radio, 88.1 FM, 95.1 FM, West Philadelphia. Remember, family, you always can call us with your comments, your questions, 215-472-0881. Again, it's 215-472-0881. If you like what you heard, you can also email us at jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. Again, it's jimmybondspodcast@gmail.com. It's JIMMYBONDS podcast@gmail.com. Also, family, if you would like to do a podcast with me, don't hesitate. Email me. I'll get right back to you so we can get it popping. But also, family, as I say on all of our shows, until the next episode, you can find me on Good Hope Road, screaming, stay up, don't sleep in your dreams. And remember to call somebody you talked to recently, somebody you haven't talked to recently. Call them and tell them that you love them because you never know when you might get another chance. My brother Ken, I'm Jimmy Bonds, and we out. Peace.